Logistics is one of the most important and sometimes the most often overlooked aspect of Timberborn. Logistics is simply moving stuff from one location to another. By default, beavers working in a building, say a water pump or a farm, are responsible for moving their raw materials from wherever they're obtained to their storage location. And those working in a processing plant, say like a grill, are responsible for going off and obtaining their own raw materials. This is going to slow down your efficiency and also mean that your beavers are wasting an awful lot of time just moving stuff from one location to another, where they could be instead focusing their attention on pumping water or farming. Additionally, all this extra walking means that it can sometimes be harder for our beavers to tend to their personal needs like eating, drinking, and sleeping. One place in particular where this can come up is a building like a smelter. That with the smelter, we need two pieces of scrap metal to produce one metal block. Because of the fact that each piece of scrap metal is relatively heavy, we can only carry one at a time. This beaver could actually spend 3/4 of their day just going off and obtaining these raw materials. You'll notice this in your processing buildings if you look at the productivity score, which in the case of my smelter here is 29%. How do we help our beavers out? The answer is a hauling post. As the name implies, any beavers working in a hauling post are responsible for hauling. The first advantage they're going to get right away is double the carrying capacity, so from 14 kilos to 28 kilos. Additionally, beavers working in the hauling post are now responsible for hauling stuff. So rather than those working in the building, say our water pump or our farm, don't have to move the materials all on their own, this is now going to become the responsibility of the hauler. This is going to make your productivity that much higher, make your beavers that much more efficient, because they can then focus on what they're doing rather than simply moving stuff from one location to another. I like to create my hauling posts somewhere around a population of 30. It's not necessarily the population itself that's going to drive it, but I just find that usually at that point, my colony has progressed to a point where I want to set this up. I'll also set the priority down one level, basically saying that, hey, if we have any unemployed beavers, they can then start hauling stuff. The next big thing that we can do to improve productivity is put raw materials right next to where they are going to get processed. By doing this, we'll inherently shorten all of the trips that need to be made. We can then set this to obtain, which will add a new task for our haulers to make sure that they are putting, in this case, scrap metal into this pile. I'm also going to go to where we're gathering our scrap metal and set that to supply to again make sure that we're moving from one place to another. If I let the simulation run for a little while, we're going to notice a huge improvement in productivity all the way up to the mid-90s. Last little thing that's worth highlighting about our haulers is we can also go to buildings and mark them to be prioritized. I really like to do this with the water pumps because water is so important in Timberborn, so that way I can ensure that beavers working in those water pumps are going to be focused on the task at hand. So to summarize all of this, create a hauling post, create it relatively early before you think you actually need it, and then set that to be a lower priority. Number 2, make sure that you have the raw materials close by where they're going to be processed. You can utilize the obtain and supply to make sure that we're moving stuff efficiently from where it's being gathered to where it's needed to be processed or maybe consumed. Finally, you can utilize the prioritize by haulers to make sure that those locations are going to be towards the top of a hauler's list, and it can help make those buildings even more efficient.